Welcome, everyone. Good to have you all join me again today. My name is Jim Lee, and I am with SASE, and you are here for part two of the Fully Authentic Leader. Um, as last time, love to have you join us on camera if you're able to. Want to make this as engaging and interactive as possible. And some of the fun parts about our session is that I can tailor this more for you, which means you can get the most benefit out of it by asking questions, engaging, and participating. So, Larissa, thank you. So good to see you. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Were you able to join us for the first session? My memory is so bad.
And no, unfortunately, I was attending ECON, so I
Okay,
wasn't able to attend this. I
no
wanted
worries.
to,
Did you get a chance to see the video replay at all?
not yet,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
will.
Okay, I hope so. And again, you don't have to have been a part of the first one to be here. So you'll definitely benefit from our time today. I may reference some things from the first session, which hopefully you'll get a chance to watch that video and you can catch up. But just to make your life hopefully a little bit more easier than having to go around and to look for everything, Larissa, I'm going to put in the chat box links that you can use that may be beneficial. So in the chat box, you're going to see three links. One is how to connect with me. So please add me on your LinkedIn. I love messages from there. I get a lot of people that message me that say, "Hey Jim, I was just in your session. It was amazing. I had a question on this. I was thinking about it." Always feel free to reach out to me. And then on the second one was like part one of the video. So if you weren't able to join us for part one of the video, I have a link here so that you can watch it. You can catch up on the things that we talked about. And most importantly, I created on number three is a worksheet. And some of you may have some issues with Google Docs. And if you can't download that, I will put the actual PDF here in the chat box as well. But this PDF, Larissa, if you download it and maybe print it out, and as you're watching that video, you can fill in the blank on some of the questions and thoughts that they have that I will be going over. And it's designed to, number one, help you to retain some of the information. Number two, help you to start applying this into your own life so that you can benefit from the things that we talk about. And then
Yeah.
some of the other things is like it gives you the opportunity to be able to really help find ways that maybe you can have new application for the things that we're talking about. And we're going to go through some of those today too. But, my hope is that like I really want my time that I'm spending with each one of you to be not only meaningful and it connects with you, but more than that, I want it to be something where it's impactful, right? I love for it to be something that you could time and time, go back to and say, oh, what was it that he mentioned? What was that he shared, and allow that to be something that can continue to serve you, even though I'm not around in what I do. So that's what you'll see in the chat box out there. And yeah, any questions in the meanwhile, Larissa, while you're available here?
So I will
No?
definitely make sure to watch part one.
Okay, okay. And
Thank you
then
for
yeah,
the links.
yeah, absolutely. And then again, I hope that it'll serve you and allow you to be able to really do well in the work that you do. Oh, I've got some feedback. So hold on a second. I gotta find out who I need to mute. All right, let me see if we can do this really quick. All right, we got about 32 people on here. And again, feel free to come on, like Larissa, join Larissa, sit with her. My thought is this is less formal. Maybe we're in a lunchroom together, kind of sitting around in a small table, and we're having a time of conversations. In fact, I do go to a lot of companies to help share and do some public speaking. And I always ask like, hey, can I get some lunch together with some people? It'd be great if we can get people together and I could share some lunch that we could always enjoy. And then from it, my goal has always been, what are some questions? And people ask a lot of these questions to me. And so that's where a lot of this comes from is like questions that people ask and what are things that, I've done to help me with my career and, what are some things that we can do to to help everyone else with that as well. So please join us in the lunch conversation. In the meanwhile, I like to kick us off with a video that just recognizes, a lot of these things that we do. I'd like to say that it's free and that's easy to do, but realistically, without our sponsors, it's not something that we would be able to do. So I wanted to thank Dow for sponsoring our sessions. It's one of those things where again they provided funding, not just for us to pay me, but it's also to help keep the support for a lot of things that we do. So with that, I am going to start with the video from our sponsor, and I hope you'll get a chance to take a watch for it. And I know a lot of you may be working for a different company, but more importantly, it's also understanding like maybe some of the Dow products that are out there is something that in your household that you would appreciate as well for the work that they do for us. Oops. Let me replay that because I think the sound is not coming through. One second here. There we go. All right, here we go.
At Dow, wonder is the foundation of every great achievement. It's what bonds us together, pushes us to keep finding solutions, and lets us create something from nothing. Without that spark, there is no science, no creativity, no thirst for knowledge, or hunger for change. But with it, the breakthroughs our customers need most are just one innovation away. As we work to create a more connected world, a more circular economy, and more climate-conscious technologies and solutions, we're designing products alongside our customers with their biggest challenges in mind. So we can grow with the world around us, starting with our promise to reach zero carbon emissions by 2050. Every solution we find is fueled by wonder and powered by science. It's this fuel that drove our past and propels us to the future. Wait until you see where wonder takes us next.
All right. Well, thank you, Dow, again for your generous contributions to SASE and allowing us to do this program. Um, Kind of going back to where we started out in session one. A little bit of a reminder, and for those that missed the first session, this can kind of help you to kind of get a little bit of a catch up for more of like the reasons behind and how this works and my personal stories of how I've used this tool. Feel free to again watch the video and I'll put the links again in the chat box for you in case you came a little bit late. There's also a worksheet that I've created for each one of you to use to help you to kind of make sure that not only do you know what I'm talking about, for those of you that want to really learn and master it, I encourage you to watch the video. You could put it on probably 1.5 speed and then follow along, but with it should really help you in the competency of your development on these leadership skills. What I talked about last session was just, like how do we become better leaders? And I think we're really good at a lot of us executing, which comes from maybe just a higher background of maybe doing well in school. Maybe we're really good at individual work. We're really good at leading ourselves. But unfortunately, when it comes to leadership, we're not often good at leading other people. And we have a harder time in terms of leading others the way that they perform best. And I talked about using just a simple analogy of understanding our leadership behaviors come from things that are natural to us and how we do things, and nurture and how we've learned to do things. And a simple analogy that I said was talking about like your left-handedness or right-handedness. Are you left-handed or right-handed? And from that, like we are naturally either left-handed or right-handed, but we can learn how to use our left hand to do things. And I shared like I've had surgery on my right side 5 times. So I've learned how to become left-handed. In fact, because over time, my left hand will become better. I am more comfortable doing things than I would do before with my left hand. I'm not right-handed, and I'll never be as good as my right hand, but my left-handed can help me to feel like I'm better. And one of the examples I gave is using chopsticks. I could do that with my left hand because I have done so many things with over time, starting with sticky rice to now I could eat noodles with red ramen, soup base and not get it all over my white, shirt, like this nice 1587 SASE collab shirt that I wear, right? And but it won't feel comfortable. And in fact, it'll feel very uncomfortable. And that in itself doesn't necessarily mean I'm being inauthentic. It's just I haven't had a chance to realize the full me, my left-handed and right-handed me. And I took that analogy and said there's more dimensions of that we can apply that to. And another way to look at it, is like your personality type. If you ever done this one's Myers-Briggs, a lot of them there's DISC, what type of Jedi are you? Because it was, May the 4th last week. All these different things are just to help you to understand which one are you naturally and which one have you learned to do in your nurture. And what I shared was this tool called the 70/30 tool. And what I said was like, for me, I'm right-handed, so everything I do right-handed will feel like, it's unconscious competency, it's natural and it's energizing, and everything left-handed is limited, it's conscious and it's draining. But to frame that in saying that I am not fully authentic only when I use my right hand. In fact, I could learn to become more fuller and I could increase in my authenticity by learning to also develop my left hand side of things. And then that would be some behavior that is learned. And the great news is, again, just like my left-handed, all things over time get easier. It's never easy, but it can get easier. And another analogy I like to share with that might be is like some of us might say like, hey, I'm not good at networking. I'm not good at going out and learning to maybe shoot the breeze. They call it water cooler talk, but just like conversations that might not be work oriented. And a lot of you I hear say that, well, I don't feel authentic in those conversations. I don't really care about what they think about the weather. I may not really care about how nice their shoes are, but that's just conversation that I learned to have, and I don't feel authentic. And my argument might be like, yeah, you may not care specifically about it, but building a relationship with someone and treating them the way they want to be treated may be something of a value for you. And then to say maybe that skill is more in your 30, it's a learned skill, it's something that's hard for you to do. But I don't know if that necessarily, just because you feel uncomfortable, is inauthentic for you. And then I didn't share this part, but a proof of that may be a lot of you are more willing to learn, let's say, a new technical skill for work and not feel like that is inauthentic to you, but you're less willing to learn a social skill set of leadership because you will attribute that to being less authentic. And that's where like this kind of comes in to say, well, if you had to get a job and I would say, hey, Christina, well, good to see you. Love to have you for this job, but I need you to learn, how to use Canva instead of PowerPoint. Our company is moving towards this skill set. Would you like to join? And then you might be like, oh yeah, totally. I'd rather do that for that job. Then you have no hesitation. But a lot of times I would tell people like, hey, for you to get promoted and to have a better relationship and trust with your managers, you may learn how to go in, ask how their weekend was, and learn to build a personal relationship. That's where I get a lot of pushback on inauthenticity. And so that's where I'm kind of coming into next is like, hey, understand what are those mental limitations that you have and what are those challenges that you're currently facing that may be also inherently not only hindering you on specific goals, but how is that showing you as you being fully authentic and fully yourself in a lot of ways? And one tool I'm going to share today is what we call the Peace Index. And the Peace Index is what I would say is a great tool to say, hey, these are different facets of your life. And it's not going to be all encompassing. But if I had to say, like, well, let's look at some that may represent more fully of the dimensions of who you are, not just your work life, not just your career and the job that you do, but like, hey, let's talk about how the component of different people in your life are doing. How are the people you have? Sorry, how the work that you're doing is more purpose oriented towards what you feel like your purpose in life is. How you feel like where you live or where you spend a lot of time is contributing to your life, as well as well, whether or not you feel provided for, as well as what your personal life index, health index would be. This may give you a better index of how you are and who you are. And I find if you have a higher peace index, that's where people feel like they're becoming their full authentic self. When you have a lower peace index, it tends to indicate they don't feel like they're living their life to the max, and they kind of have to not be the full version of themselves. They don't get to be the full version of themselves, and then so it takes a step back. So really quickly, I'm going to go through this tool and want you to rank yourself on what your peace index is, and we'll go through it one by one individually. But I want you, if you have, get your phone out, your calculator, or a piece of paper, because I want you to jot some of these notes down. So your peace index is the average of these five components ranked 1 through 100. Okay. So, for example, your peace index would be score yourself between 1 to 100. How well do you feel like you're living out your purpose in life? So, if you say, like, yeah, I know I'm an engineer and I don't know how that's my purpose in life, versus I'm doing engineering work, which I enjoy doing, but I can see how my analytical skills as well as my team building skills for other people are creating products and services that really help humanity, and I could see the impact that it does, then you would have a higher purpose score. And so I would want you to consider it and rank yourself 1 through 100 on what you think your purpose is. Okay, and jot that down. The next one would be your place. Think about where you spend a lot of time. It could be your house. For me, I spend a lot of time in my office here. Maybe your place would be something that I really think about my community, my neighborhood, could be your office, maybe your town, but it's what you mentally attribute to in terms of how your surroundings is impacting you. So some people would say, I work from home, I'm in my office, and I give it a very low score, maybe like a 55, because my office is dreary, it doesn't have great lighting, and my desk is just uncomfortable. Sometimes all they need to do is just buy a better desk, get a better chair, decorate their office, make it feel a little bit more personal, and their place index goes up. And I'll actually give you a little bit of a secret. For me, because I spend so much time in my office, I put a lot of things around it to remind me of the things that are important. And it helps personalize my space. In fact, as I'm doing this presentation with you, I could see my own little square on the video here. And in the background, there are things that are very important to me. And it's a subconscious reminder that helps me to stay a little bit more motivated and meaningful in the work that I do tied to my purpose, which is very important to me. And it helps me to get through. So I'll show you what my background really looks like, but I blur it because be a distraction to you and it's really to serve me. So Larissa, I'll give you a chance to kind of see what my background looks like. Like I'm a big fan of the Green Bay Packers, so that's why you see a lot of that. You'll see pictures of myself and my family. And above it are like all the thank you cards, actually, all the thank you cards I ever get for all the coaching work that I do. Below that are all books that my friends have written for me. And I like to say they wrote them for me, but they're books that they wrote and they all sign it. There's personal messages in there right? And then there's some more pictures of my family over here, as well as some people on my team that I've worked on. They're very important and meaningful things in my life, but I blur them because it's important to me. And it's one way I increase the peace index for me by making my workplace better. I've also lived now out in the suburbs, and that was a conscious choice because I felt like the traffic where I used to live, which was in Culver City, California, West LA, was really dense and it was really hard for me to get around. It was starting to stress me out. Where now I live out in the suburbs of Santa Clarita Valley, a lot more easier to navigate and get through. And it just helps me to have an overall better peace index, right? So hopefully that for you helps you to better analyze yourself on your peace index score for place and could help you to better get an accurate score for that. Okay, sounds good. How are we doing, Larissa? Good? Yeah? All right. Next is provision. This may be where you may never feel like you're getting paid enough, possibly. But provision is, do you feel like you are provided for enough? Do you feel like you are living in a place or have a job or have things that can help you with your provision? So it may not just be income, but it could be expenses, right? Do you have your expenses taken care of? Again, living out in the suburbs. Enoch used to live in Culver City also, go Culver, and then moved out maybe somewhere else. I don't know where you live now, but the cost of living is probably cheaper, and your provision score may go up because the amount of money you make now is a little bit easier. And especially maybe Virginia, unless you're in Nova or the DMV area, probably just expensive, more expensive. But I have some buddies that live down in Raleigh, Virginia. Yep. Oh, there you go. Nova. It's just as expensive, maybe. Hopefully not so bad. And okay, Fairfax, a little more expensive, possibly. But yeah, those are some of the things that might be impacting your provision score. So this is also for you to rate. Like, do you feel like you're provided for? That would be what helps you to manage your impact on your peace index. I'm going to skip over personal health for now and go to people. And your people score would be like, hey, what do you think about the people in your life? If you were to score the people that you spend a lot of time on, or the people that you have to spend time on, like score them from 1 to 100. How do you feel about those people? If it's a negative score, then everybody around you is draining you. If it's a positive score, then you like the people around you. You're probably doing a good job either managing the people around you, or you're probably doing a great job of making sure you're surrounded by the people that you want to be with. But that ultimately is what your people score is. And then lastly is your personal health. Your personal health, you want to score that from 1 to 100 in terms of how healthy do you think you are. And to kind of help with that score on this next slide, I want you to think about like these are the four components, I would say, of personal health. There's the physical aspect of things, and I would say like, can you physically perform the needs that you need? Maybe getting in and out of bed, getting in and out of the car, being able to go to the airport, wake up on time, the physical things that you have to do to live the life that you want to have. And my argument is your personal health is probably what really supports all these other indexes in a way. So, like, what would you say how that manages for your physical health? Next is your intellectual ability. If your company wants you to learn a new skill, if you have some desire to want to know something, or someone asks you to study something, what is your learning capacity to perform the skills according to your goals? Again, these personal health scores, they all help you with these areas of your other index. They support your maybe purpose, your ability to do the purpose, or live where you do, or have more academics or earn certificates so that you can have more provision. And then next would be your emotional health. Are you able to emotionally regulate how you feel? Maybe not being too happy all the time, or maybe too sad about things all the time. There's clinical definitions for both. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but again, some people can be very, very happy. That's great, but that could be bad if it's getting in the way of performing your work. Or on the flip side, being too sad and depressed, that could be negative things as well. But your emotional health, of your ability to regulate your emotions to perform the needs that you have, that would be what it scores there. And then lastly, I would say is your spiritual health. this doesn't necessarily mean a religion. The religions tend to encompass like a spiritual life, but what I would say for spiritual is more like your values, the values and integrity. And are you able to live with the values that you want to? And the reason why these tend to be all connected within each other is like I remember a time when I was in COVID, I had COVID and it was horrible. I physically was really run down. I couldn't figure out and learn how to do the PCR test. Remember the test that you had to breathe into, not just the one that you did the nose, but it was the other COVID test. It was a little more complicated. It was just different, right? I couldn't read the instructions. I just couldn't understand how this worked compared to the other ones. And then emotionally, I was just really irritable. I was frustrated. I was just really like upset at like some of the simpler things, right? Because my all this was just being compromised. And then spiritually, like I started to compromise some things that like I wouldn't normally do. Like I would be willing to maybe like yell at people because I was easily frustrated, right? Like my emotions were getting out and I was violating some things. Like I wasn't treating people respectfully. I didn't feel like I could be honest with myself or have relationships with other people. Like I was doing work during COVID and I just was like just had to fake it to make it through the day on some things, right? Like these are things that were compromising some of the integrity and values that I had, right? And so I kind of we can separate these apart, but I bucket all of them together to help you to understand what personal health is and why personal health is so valuable, not just to the peace index, but how it supports everything else. So your goal now is like, can you attribute a value of 1 to 100 for all of these, and then take the average, and that will calculate your peace index score. And if you have any questions on this, I can clarify. Feel free to put them in the chat box, or if you want to ask, unmute yourself and ask. More than happy to answer that too. But I do wanted to give you some time to look at your peace index score and help you to assess, does this help you to represent how you feel and also help you to understand how you show up every day and rank yourself with that authenticity. So, for example, my peace index score is about a 93, right? And a 93 is probably a little bit of average what I do. My index on purpose is very high because I always feel like, the things that I do now are always meaningful and intentional. I only select the type of work that I want to do, and it's aligned towards my purpose. And my purpose, like my greater vision statement, if you follow me on social media, it always says is like, I want the world to know that your health is more important than your wealth, that if you index on your health because it impacts all these other things, you'll see that your wealth will naturally follow. My mission work, though, is I want to do whatever it takes to help create world peace in a way. And that's where I do leadership training because I think if I could help you to lead better and you can manage like your personal health better, then you'll get less frustrated, you'll get less upset. And I try to do that on on a micro level within this community that helps me to hopefully multiply myself into you, and the impact that you have with your coworkers and how you lead other people as a manager will help create that ripple effect as well, right? So that's why my peace index tends to be really high in what I do, right? I moved out to the suburbs. My provision, I did really well in finances. I do a good job in managing my finances. And so I don't make billions of dollars and millions of dollars, but I make enough money that helps me to support the lifestyle I have, controlling costs, as well as making income as needed. And I do a good job of surrounding myself with the people I want to, as well as inviting people, I would say in my 30 in my life, but they help me to grow. And learning how to manage difficult people is probably one of the things that helped me to increase my peace index because now I can manage the people around me versus feeling trapped by some of the people I didn't like to work with. But the one that I think is most important, I think a lot of people tend to neglect, especially in STEM, tends to be personal health. And the reason for that is I think a lot of us tend to index on achievement, accomplishment, and outcome. And sometimes I think we increase intellectual health and we maybe not have had time to like work on emotional health. For me, growing up as an Asian, like emotional communication as well as being able to express emotions was not something that was practiced a lot in my household. And then as well as the physical side, that was something I did maybe for sports because I needed to, but I never saw a healthy way of doing sports that was done in a scalable way. And my spiritual life and my integrity was probably implicit but not explicit. So I didn't really explicitly learn, but it was something that I always stumbled on across to do along the way. And so in our conversation today, as we look at your peace index, I'd like to have you look at your score, but most importantly, maybe rank from your score which of these tend to be the top and which of these tend to be the bottom. And I think most of the people, if I talk to them, I find that personal health is not one of the top items in their lives. And the story I want to share with you is a little bit going back to like, okay, I think if you work on your personal health a little bit more, then I think it helps rise all ships in your peace index. And I think what's really important to realize is like in your work that you do, whether it's having capacity to increase things in your 30, willingness to learn, having a little bit more of that growth mindset to say, hey, I'm going to invest some of my energy and save 30% of it towards things I want to do is really going to make a huge difference, not only in your personal health, but how you look at all these other obstacles that you may have in your life where these things may be rated. Okay. And just on passing, I'm not going to go too deep on this because it could be a workshop in itself, but just to let you know, the top two items tend to be things that you're pretty good at without thinking about it. The bottom two are the things that you're bad at, and you probably try to put some effort, but you haven't figured it out, so you ignore it. And the third one tends to be the one that probably can go either way. So if your peace index is high, your third one goes up. If your peace index is low, your third one's dragging it down. And the reason why I want to focus a little bit more on personal health, but also more the mindset behind this, is to help you to consider like, again, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's really hard for you to have healthier relationships with other people, to feel like you're in control, living with purpose in your life, advocate for where you want to live, as well as advocate for the financial goals that you may have or the needs that you may want, like asking for a year-end raise, or like when it comes to getting a new job and there's like negotiation time for your salary, like you're not going to be able to do those things if you don't have enough capacity for your personal health. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions on this, feel free to throw it in the chat box or raise your virtual hand. So with that, I'm going to move down to like how do we navigate through these personal health items? And I like to index on the physical health part. I don't know if anybody here like really works on their physical health, but there's a lot of things that I think if you work on just being a little bit more mindful, whether it's, hey, I'm going to grab 10,000 steps today, or hey, I'm going to sacrifice an hour earlier in the morning, maybe walk a mile around the street. That should take like 20, 30 minutes, and just try to like plan an hour just for myself every day. You'll find your physical index goes up. And you'll find now that you have space in your mind as you're walking, you're probably intellectually processing things, you're emotionally processing things, because now your body has compartmentalized its focus on the physical side of things, freeing you out from the more, I would say, primal instincts of fight or flight in the frontal cortex of your brain that tends to hinder intellectual and emotional growth, as well as the ability to compromise or live through your spiritual life. And so this next slide is a way I think best illustrates a lot of this. I'm going to use this to illustrate like what does growth look like and using a little bit of that 70-30 that we talked about, like how I can help you to be more fully authentic, not just comfortable, which means it's authentic. Okay. So one of the things I ended last session on is really saying like, hey, life is about growing. And to growing, you have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And a lot of times, if we don't choose where we want to be uncomfortable, we uncomfortableness will unfortunately choose us where maybe we don't want to be uncomfortable. So looking at this chart here, I want us to consider like what are the different emotions that come with these areas? And again, the argument that I often hear is like where people are feeling the most authentic is probably in areas of high energy and high feelings, right? Let's call this performance zone. And this is all done by Tony Schwartz and Jim Lohr in this area of power of full engagement. I'm just giving you the real condensed version of it. And it's just like when you're in this zone, you're constantly feeling positive. You love challenge. You're kind of in this area where you feel like life just can't get better, right? But in this area, my argument would be is you're not going to really give yourself an opportunity to grow, right? So if I go to the gym and I'm wearing like if someone says, "Hey Jim, can you lift like 20 pounds and do this over and over again?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could do this till the cow comes home. This is no problem. I could do this over and over. It feels good, right? It feels good. I feel strong. I feel macho because I can show off my strengths." But then the next challenge might be is like, okay, and I do go to a gym and my coach will do this like, "Hey Jim, I want you to like let's put 5 more pounds there. Let's see what you do with 25 pounds." And when I move into this area, I'm going to start going into what I call like a little bit of the survival zone. I still have high energy because I'm able to do that workout and exercise. But then slowly my feelings are a little bit negative. It's like, oh wow, this is a little heavier. Oh, it's kind of wobbly. I'm a little unbalanced. I'm a little out of control. And the emotions that start coming out are these green ones where I'm feeling a little impatient, right? Like it's not working the way I thought it would be, a little irritable that I'm losing control. I might be frustrated that it's happening, and I could get a little angry. And what's important to realize is that those are in the high energy and negative feelings, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's really bad, right? It's just I have some growth and have some learning to do. And so think about it. Maybe you know how to do certain things that work a certain way and you feel like amazing. And all of a sudden you get a new boss. And I talked about this last week. It's like you get this new boss that wants it done differently. Now, depending how different it is, it can go anywhere from impatient, irritable, frustrated to getting here where you're defensive, fearful, anxious, and worried. Now, this is the part I want you to start realizing. When growth comes in, intellectually, emotionally, to do things, how does that feel for you? And if you don't practice it on the physical side, which might be easier to monitor and regulate, it's going to be really hard to manage and regulate when your emotions and your intellect is directly being challenged at that point, right? So emotions and intellectual growth can be manipulated through physical challenge like exercise, but if it gets directly related through things at work that you have to do, you may just see like how maybe weak you are in that area and where this lands for you. Okay. Now, the goal is, can you stay within this green zone? That is where the people index is. Like if you're good with having conversations with people and you've practiced being comfortable, being uncomfortable through networking, water cooler talk, and other stuff, it may be easier that if someone tells you to do something here, you can ask for permission to bring it back into somewhere here. But if you don't have the people skills as well, then you'll have a harder time managing this to be in a safe area for you. So going back to the analogy, I'm working out. It's now 25 pounds. I used to be able to do as many as I wanted to. Now this has dropped down to be like maybe 5 or 6. It's okay. I'm still doing them and I'm still growing. But then what happens next, right? If I do this in a safe area, what I do is I move from here. I'm done with my exercise. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. Man, what a workout. I go back to my car. It's a little harder to open the door. Maybe my steering wheel feels a little bit heavier. I go back in the house. I close the door. I make my protein shake. It's a little heavier. Like things are a little heavier, but it's manageable. I'm exhausted. I feel a little empty. Maybe depressed that I didn't do as much as I could. Maybe sad because like I'm not feeling as energetic or energy. I'm at a little bit lower on that energy level, but this is okay. This is expected after you've had a good workout. And so some of you got to go to the gym, you might feel this. But if you were put in a very stressed out area that was unhealthy, if I use the exercise analogy, you can accidentally create an area where you get injured. And when you're injured physically, you're hopeless, depleted, discouraged, and lost. Those are the emotions that come in. And what happens next is you won't get stronger. You have to heal. And you're going to have to go back to like doing things maybe at a lower state, right? You're going to do less than you did here because you got injured. At work, that might look like you didn't manage the load that you had. Maybe you tried to overachieve, but you weren't able to manage expectations through communications with other people. And so then you burnt yourself out. Maybe you made a lot more errors in the work that you're supposed to do. You basically probably overpromised and underdelivered in a lot of ways, and you didn't meet expectations of others, not even for yourself. And what again happens there is you have to go back. You have to redo things, but you have to do this with maybe a little bit of emotional, frustration, embarrassment, like all those other things come in, and you're gonna have to do it a little bit slower instead. And you've lost the trust of the people around you. Again, do you see how the peace index is starting to go down, right? Just because you're unable to manage those type of conversations that you have in a way. And so then what happens here naturally if you do things in a healthy way, you'll like, hey, man, it was quite the workout. That was a tough workload, but hey, I learned from it. I didn't overpromise. I didn't underdeliver. I was able to meet what they wanted to do. Sure, I could have done better, but I landed safe and I met all goals. A little tired. I could use a little vacation. I'm gonna be relaxed. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna recover. And then what your brain does is starts processing, especially when you sleep. It starts processing. It relives things. It creates new neural networks to help you to achieve this, such that if you had to do that work again, it's not going to be easy, but it may be easier than it was here. And slowly over time, what you'll see is you'll start trajectorying outwards because you have greater energy, you have positive feelings, even though it's something new and it's hard to do, you understand the importance of it, you understand how to navigate through it, and so therefore you're able to actually get the work done. And it's so good because your ability to navigate through this is what really allows for growth to occur, right? Your ability to say, I'm going to grow because I'm going to navigate through these in a healthy way. Learning to communicate and manage my relationships will help us to do this. Now, in my first talk, I mentioned about how for me, it was almost like all or nothing. And then earlier in my career, I probably had more of a scarcity mindset where I felt like if I wasn't going all 100%, and if I wasn't burnt out and tired at the end of the day, I didn't give it my all. And giving it your all doesn't always mean that you're doing it in a safe way. Prime example is if you drive a car, you could probably put the pedal all the way down on the accelerator and you can give your car its all. Doesn't mean that you can drive it safely at the fastest speed as it goes. And I think that's important for all of us to realize. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that's a safe way to do it. And so I would like for you to consider as you do this, how do you live your life? And so for me, with my heritage of living with immigrant families, and I don't know if you had an immigrant family background as well, all I saw was my parents, they were probably more in a survival state. That was modeled for me. And so all I saw was I had to give it my all. And if I wasn't, here, and then I wasn't here at the end of the day, then I didn't feel like I was being either dutiful, honoring. I didn't feel like I was doing my best unless I was in this state. And, a lot of times the only time I was here was on vacation. I would go here and I'd scrap up my measly 5 days. I'd go somewhere on vacation. And then here, guess what? My energy state is still high. And then I'd have such a great time. I'd go to sleep there, come back. But my energy state was always here. And then I'd come back to work and I was like here. And a lot of you, if you ever had that saying like, man, I need a vacation from my vacation, it might be because your mind was always racing here and you never get a chance to rest. So seeing that for myself, I realized if I'm constantly here and my managers, I think, would appreciate the hard work that I do because I'm doing it really well and I'm getting amazing scores. But yet the rest of the team wants to operate here. They may think I'm crazy and they may not want to follow me. right? And this is where I also would look at them in a negative state. And I would think that they were lazy, they were not hardworking. When my coworkers were talking to each other at the water cooler, I thought they were slacking off. And that was really became the barrier for my career growth. And so I realized this was not the fully authentic me. This was what I could do, but I was making this the norm. But it wasn't sustainable, and it was going to cause burnout and a crash for me. And then all my, I would say like my relationships that I had with the women that I dated probably was very unhealthy because like I needed them to provide this for me to balance out for this, and that's not fair in a lot of ways, right? So then I later on learned, hey, how do we do this in a healthy way? How do I manage my energy in a state so that's more in the green section, right? And if you look at it, it's kind of like 70-30, right? How do I do 70% of the things in this way? And maybe if I have to, I go in the red state. But the red state shouldn't be the norm, it should be the exception. And what I learned was to manage my load, have better conversations, create more scalable, sustainable outcomes that I really enjoyed work. I wasn't looking forward to vacation and needing vacation as a mental recovery state that I could be in a performance zone because I was in the performance all the time versus just the high energy state that I was burning out because I was doing a load and overpromising and underdelivering, not only to my coworkers and to my leadership, but also just to myself, right? Because nobody wanted to be around me. Nobody wanted to work with me at that time. And so this is what I want us to consider. How do you do things and say, look, I can fully authentic zone looks like the green, meaning it's going to be me willing to grow and try new things, not reject and only be able to do things in this state my way, but I can do things in this state their way because it gives me a little balance for capacity. Give me time to recover, not always having to go all out all the time, whether it's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 6 a.m. to midnight every day. Like that's not sustainable. And so one thing I was told is to consider like, are you resting from work or are you working from rest? The first one, are you resting for work? Maybe that you're here, that you're working so hard to the point where you have to sleep. And my argument there is you're getting diminishing returns. At some point, maybe I would argue after dinner, your 1 hour of work that you do is probably getting you the benefits of what 30 minutes would be do if you were really fresh. And then what you're really doing though is you're sabotaging yourself. You're allowing for more errors to occur. You're risking not only your mental health, I would say physically, your cortisol levels are going high. You're probably going to start gaining weight due to the hormonal response. You're probably going to want more sugar rush to help sustain that positive emotional state artificially to fool you to think that you're here, even though you're here. All that's going to perpetuate and leave you in a probably a worse state with your physical health, your personal health, and then guess what? Your scores will go down. You're gonna get frustrated that you're working hard for your company, but they're not recognizing the hard work. They're not appreciating it. Then you start going on maybe a performance plan, and then you have to go look for another job. What most people don't see is that story could be managed by yourself on learning how to stay in this green zone instead, right? And so, what I want to advocate for is learn to work from rest. Get the sleep that you need. Index on sleep. Use like a smartwatch or a personal manager and allow yourself to really work on these areas of like your physical, your intellectual, emotional, spiritual health. Each one of these should be challenged in a 70-30 state that allows you to grow in this way so that you can now work from rest and having a healthy mindset where you'll always give your best when you're on. And you make realistic promises based on what you can do from a rested state, not from a burnt out state in what you have. Okay? And so my hope in today's session of being fully authentic is like, yes, being fully authentic may have to represent times of being uncomfortable, but learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable so you can grow. Versus some people feel like their full authenticity is when they go all out, like they're putting the floor on the pedal to the metal. They're like their car is going 120 miles per hour and they're in this red state because they see achievement as a representation of who they are. But the reality is, if it's not sustainable and it's not healthy, I don't think that is fully authentic to who you would be because it causes you to compromise your integrity. And ultimately, it's going to lower your identity through your peace index being lower as well. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there for today. And in the next session, I'm going to kind of talk about another tool that'll help us to better understand how do we regulate some of those things of being challenging and being supporting and allow it to help us to not only manage ourselves to bring out our best, but also how do we build those relationships with other people in terms of having healthier relationships with people so that could also help us with our peace index as well. And the rest of these, I would say, these are all some things that you can manage. You can manage these. They may be difficult if they're lower, two on your peace index score. They may be harder to do, but you give yourself the best chance of being able to work on it for yourself and having a healthier life if you can work on your physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual life. I call this, by the way, the PIES acronym, PIES. By working on your pies and growing them intentionally through the spectrum and recognizing not all negative feelings are bad feelings. They just have to be managed in a healthy way. And maybe use the 70-30 principle as a guideline on how much you can handle and what you can do. All right. Anybody have any questions or thoughts they'd like to share? I see a few in the chat box I'll be answering, but definitely want to give people a chance to throw them in the chat box. I'll be going through them. And Larissa, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands as well. Been so glad to have you listening in, and thanks for coming on camera. Shabnan asked, what are strategies to identify how bad is bad? Being in the burnout zone, any tips, right? So, Shabnan, I would say like use these emotions as a way to regulate, engage. Hopefully, after you asked this question, when I talked about like, do you feel like afterwards that you have a time of recovery where you can be relaxed, peaceful, and you don't fear coming back in here, right? If you're constantly in red, it's like one of those things where you start having a fear going back to work, a fear of um, being put in an unhealthy way. A lot of that starts unconsciously, but becomes conscious as you recognize, like, wow, I'm not so excited to go to work. Might not feel as excited as you're going to work from day one, but you should see how the work is making you stronger and better by doing this and having a purpose in your life and how your work is helping you with your purpose can help you to persevere through these things. But um, just going here and feeling like you have to go all out, again, that might be maybe unrealistic expectations you communicated to other people, unrealistic expectations you have for yourself in terms of what is authentic, right? Like you'll hear from me. I'm never going 100% as a default. My target is 70% because I have to also be ready for the unpredictable that happens. Like, let's say, my daughter's at school. If I get a call, it's like, hey, Charlotte needs to be picked up. She's not feeling well. Like, I need to be able to drop everything and manage that extra load of my 30, even though it might not be something that I feel comfortable with at the time, right? But it's not going to be where my life is at 50-50 and then this just gets add on and now I'm at 30-70, which is really hard to recover from. So Shabnan, I hope that helps you. Julie asked a question. Will the recording be available and shared with us? Yes, Julia, because you attended, you should get it. But if you go to our webinars page, They're always up there, and I'm putting the links again back down below. Part one of the video is on this YouTube channel, but if you go to the SASE webinar page, you'll start seeing them being uploaded by my faithful buddy and coworker Clarence, and there's a link for that as well. And then let's see, Deborah is asking, it's easier for me to identify this in others, but not my own. Oh, 100%. You know why it's so hard to identify this for yourself and why like coaches or like asking just people that care about you to share is we become immune sometimes to these feelings, right? Like I didn't know I was in this red zone. I just thought this was normal, right? And over time, like anything that is uncomfortable, unfortunately, can become um, more comfortable. The question is it a healthy thing or an unhealthy thing? And if you ever heard of the analogy of the boiling frog, right? You could put a frog in water and it thinks it's safe. And if you increase the temperature slow enough over time, you could boil that frog and that frog will never jump out, right? Because it didn't know it was unsafe. And I think we do that to ourselves and almost till it's too late. But if you go to the doctor and sometimes like you do blood panels, there are metabolic ways that you could also index for this. And so if you have like, high blood pressure, a lot of metabolic disease, yes, it could be because you're not eating healthy and all that stuff. But my question to you is, why are you not eating healthy? And a lot of times people are trying to artificially create positive feelings through food to counterbalance the negative feelings through unhealthy experiences at work. So that might be some interesting insight for you, but that's true. Hey Neil, thanks for joining me. I see your
Hey,
hand.
Jim.
Yeah, what's up?
Yes. So, question. This is extremely helpful, by the way. Thank you for sharing. Right. This is kind of an eye-opening when I see it first. The question I have is that let's say if I want to measure where the my group is,
Hmm.
or where is the organization or a specific function within the company is there a way to measure it without asking them how is your feeling?
Yeah, great question. Um, Parlaying on the previous question where someone asked, like, will I know? Like, is this something that you can identify for yourself? It's hard, right? And then sometimes the question becomes, well, I can see it, but they can't see it themselves. True. Um, I would measure my team's overall health and performance based upon how they're able to meet their own goals, for example. And there's probably a lot of other factors that are in there. So, for example, if you ask your team, "Hey, how much do you think we can accomplish by the end of the month?" Right? And they say, "Neil, we could do 100." And you're like, "Awesome, that's great." They do 100 and maybe they knock it off, they do 110. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Now your expectation, Neil, as a leader, like they should be able to do 100, 110 every single time. But over time you can see, is that sustainable or was that a one flash in the pan? Realistically, I would say take that 110, knock it down 30, 40%, and say that is their 100% level. What is their 70 operating level? Because sure, they sprinted and they ran, but they didn't probably do it with great form. They didn't create great frameworks to operate out of that makes it sustainable. So then I would say, okay, let's break this down to 70 and let's focus on form. Let's focus on frameworks. Let's make sure we do this in a healthy way and see how fast they can then get back to 100. That is probably the best way to measure a team's resilience and strength. And in fact, I don't know if you do physical exercise. That's how we do this in physical exercises. You exercise, if you have a heart rate monitor, you go up to red. And you measure how fast can that go back to down through orange, back down to the yellow rating. And then when you exercise again, how fast does it shoot up to red? Some people shoot up really fast and they shoot up really down. They haven't worked on their aerobic phase, and so they're very unhealthy in that area. And so what you want to do is get them down to a level, help them work on the mechanics, getting their muscles more efficient, understand the things that they didn't learn were unhealthy, and get them to back up in that way. A lot of times, Neil, this could be like for like STEM, it's teamwork. Teamwork, a lot of times when you have a high goal, they tend to do divide and conquer, right? Everyone's like, hey, you do this part, you do this part, you do this part. They think it's the most efficient. And it is. It's efficient to get there. But what happens? Like 3 days before the deadline, they're like, hey, Neil, where's your part? You know, Yannick, where's your part? Jenny, where's your part? Jerry, where's your part? You didn't do it? Okay, fine, forget it. I'll do it. Right? And so like one person then carried the load to the rest if they didn't work out. And then they cross their like they're done. Right? And then if you keep doing that over and over again, the weaker people start puttering out, and then the top three people out of it, like say a team of five, they end up carrying the most of the load. And so you don't have an accurate view of your overall team, right? Because they're just getting it done, getting it done. But then if you say, okay, let's take a step back, and now I want you to do it through frameworks. Can you like in math, show me the work? Let's create now intermediary steps. How did you get from point A to point B? How did you do from point B to C? Some of them, if they're managers, say, hey, can you get your people to do it in a certain way? That shows you, number one, their emotional strength, their intellectual strength. Can they not do this their way, but can they do this in a repeatable way that other people can follow, right? That's great leadership skills. As well as can you create a methodology that not only your team can understand, but we can adopt as a company-wide policy overall so that everybody can do it. That would be the next way that you can say, hey, this is a scalable process that we can do over and over again in what you do. And time, when I work with companies, there are a lot of companies that can deliver any goal once. The question is, how much can you do that? And then what does their team look like at the end of the finish line and what they do? Yeah.
Thank
Kind of
you.
answer your question, Neil? Is that helpful?
Yes, it is helpful for sure. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Cool. Anyone else? Any other questions? That was a great one. Yeah, so hopefully from today's session, a lot of what you were able to gain is at least for yourself, how are you able to manage and regulate your own energy so that you could always show up and not burn yourself out. And the other thing would be is, as Neo probably asked in this question, if you're leading other people, how can you make sure that what the capacity level of your own team is, and what are ways to measure that as well? And so, if again, you can get your team probably to do anything once. The question is, can you get them to do it over and over again? And my challenge to the leaders would be is you can make yourself a better leader of others if you could help them to do this in a sustainable way. And remember, anything new, you're going to expect a little bit of failure and challenge. But over time, if you do this in a healthy way, they can grow it, they can get better and better aligned, and you'll find yourself with a lot more success that is sustainable and a lot less fear of coming to work, and they'll enjoy the work if you align it as a manager, actually, if you can align this back to maybe their purpose, how it's going to make their life better and achieve their goals that they have. And I would say that was probably one of the secrets to my success as a people manager was always aligning company goals and how it's going to train them using this type of a methodology towards their personal goals so they could do more in the lives that they live as well. All right. So with that, I am going to turn off the recording. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and officially close our session for today. But if you have more questions, if you want to ask some other things off camera, feel free to do so. And I am more than happy to stick around for a little bit as well. So with that, thank you for coming to part 2. And I hope you'll come next week to part 3 as we learn how to bring this all together and maximize for our own lives and how we can be fully authentic.